Hi everyone, I'm Ellie and welcome to my story corner. So this is week 2 of my 5 weekly stories. I tell stories from around the world. If this is something that you like, then please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. So as you can see, I'm wearing my fairy wings because there is a fairy in this story. This story is called The Old Woman in the Vinegar Bottle. Not quite sure what the origins of the story are, but it was a story I was told when I was a child, and I thought I'd share it with you today. So, once upon a time, there was an old woman who lived in a vinegar bottle. Don't ask me why. Very unusual place to live, a vinegar bottle. And this vinegar bottle was very small. It only had enough room for the old lady's bed, her cooker, and a table and chairs. One night, a fairy was flying by this vinegar bottle, and as she flew past the opening of the vinegar bottle, she could hear the old lady inside grumbling and grousing.
"Oh, 'tis a shame, 'tis a shame," she was saying. "I oughtn't to be living in a vinegar bottle. It's very small and cramped in here. There's no garden, no other rooms. Why, I ought to be living in a quaint little cottage in the middle of the countryside and be woken up every morning to the beautiful sound of birds singing in the trees and the sweet scent of honeysuckle that would be climbing up my walls. And I'd have a beautiful garden where I could grow flowers and fruit and vegetables, and it won't be so small and cramped inside the house because there will be plenty of room."
So the fairy called into the old lady in the vinegar bottle and said, "Hello, I hear you're not happy with your living arrangements."
"No, I'm not," said the old lady.
"And you would rather live in a quaint little cottage in the middle of a countryside?"
"Yes," said the old lady.
"Well, today's your lucky day," said the fairy. "I am here to grant your wish. All you need to do is when you go to bed tonight, turn over 3 times, and when you wake up in the morning, your wish will be granted." The old lady thought the fairy was talking a lot of rubbish, but nevertheless, she decided to take the fairy's advice and turn over 3 times when she went to bed that night. The next morning, the lady woke to the sound of a beautiful bird song and wind rustling through the branches of a nearby tree. She opened her eyes and she was in a bedroom. And in the bedroom there was a window with curtains. She got out of bed, she opened these curtains, and she could see the beautiful countryside surrounding her cottage. "Why," thought the old lady, "it worked!" And she went downstairs and she went into the garden surrounding her cottage, and there were plenty of flower beds with flowers blooming and a vegetable patch so she could grow her own vegetables. And for many days, the old lady was very happy with her quaint little cottage in the middle of the countryside. So 3 nights later, the fairy flew by the cottage to check on the old lady. As she settled by the window where the old lady's bedroom was, she could hear the old lady grumbling and grousing again.
"Oh, 'tis a shame, 'tis a shame. This cottage is very small, and it's very lonely in the middle of the countryside. There's nobody to talk to. Why, I should be living in a townhouse of red brick on the middle of a street, with lots of shops, and I could make friends with people and have tea parties in my house every single day of the week."
So the fairy tapped on the old lady's bedroom window and said to her, "I hear you're not happy with the cottage. Well, tonight, when you go to bed, turn over 3 times, and when you wake in the morning, you will be living in a townhouse. So the old lady went to bed that night, and remembering what the fairy said, she turned over 3 times, and when she woke up, she could hear the bustling of streets below. And she got out of bed, she opened the curtains, and there in front of her eyes she could see a street with lots of shops, lots of people going about their daily business, and across the road there was the town hall. And the old lady was so happy with this, she went out and she decided to go and explore the town. So a few days later, the old lady was happy with her new life. She had even made friends and was just clearing up after a tea party when she looked out the window, and there were crowds of people on the pavements, and she could see a carriage being drawn along by 6 white horses. And in this carriage was the Queen, and the Queen was waving to the crowds, and the carriage stopped just outside the town hall where the Queen was going to have her lunch. And a footman opened the door of the carriage, laid his cloak on the street so that the Queen wouldn't get her shoes dirty as she stepped out of the carriage, and she and her loyal subjects all disappeared into the town hall for lunch. That very same night, the fairy decided to come and check on the old woman. And as she flew outside the townhouse, through the keyhole of the door, she listened, and she could hear the old lady once again grumbling and grousing.
"Oh, 'tis a shame, 'tis a shame," said the old lady. "I only live in a common townhouse, while the Queen lives in a big palace, and I have to do all the housework and all the cleaning up by myself, while the Queen has servants waiting on her. Why, I should be the Queen, so that I can ride a carriage with 6 white horses, have servants attending to me, and all I do is sit on my throne with my crown, happy as ever."
So the fairy tap, tap, tapped on the door, and she called to the old lady through the keyhole. "Go to bed tonight, and when you go to bed, turn over 3 times, and when you wake up, you shall be in a palace, and you shall be the Queen and have servants waiting on you, and you will be ridden around the town in a carriage pulled by 6 white horses." So the old lady went to bed that night. She turned over 3 times, and when she woke, she was in a big grand 4-poster bed, and she had a window with velvet drapes blocking out the sunlight, and next to her was a servant who said, "Good morning, Your Majesty. What would you like for breakfast today? Tell me what you want, and I shall tell the chefs to go and cook it." And the old lady was very pleased, and at the foot of her bed was a long gown which she wore down to breakfast that morning. And in the breakfast room was a big table with servants all bringing her breakfast. And later that day, she was taken to the town hall in a carriage pulled by 6 white horses, and had people bowing and curtsying to her as she rode by. And then, 2 nights later, the fairy once again came to visit the old lady to see if she was happy. But from outside the old lady's chamber window, the fairy could hear her once again grumbling and grousing.
"Oh, 'tis a shame, 'tis a old lady. "It's very boring being the queen. All I do is just sit on my throne, and I've got a heavy crown on my head which aches my head and shoulders. Oh, 'tis a shame, 'tis a shame."
The fairy was lost for what to do next. Well, this old lady is never satisfied, thought the fairy. She's awful hard to please, and if she's not happy here, she won't be happy anywhere. So the fairy tap, tap, tapped on the old lady's window and called into her and said, "When you go to bed tonight, turn over 3 times, and when you wake up in the morning, things will be different." So the old lady, she didn't really wish for anything because she didn't really know what she wanted anymore. And so the old lady went to bed, turned over 3 times, and went to sleep, not knowing what would happen the next day. But when the old lady woke up, she was back in her vinegar bottle.
"Well, this is no good," said the old lady. "I'm right back where I started."
And she looked around her and she thought,
"Well, it may not be big, it may not be grand, but it's cozy, and it has everything I need. So I think I'll be happy here in my vinegar bottle after all."
So that was my retelling of The Old Lady in a Vinegar Bottle. I hope you like it, and join me again next week for next week's story. Till then, goodbye.